welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 507, and today's date is November 1st, 2014, and the title of this episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief for this Saturday. Now, we realize in Europe it's completely falling apart. They're in a recession/depression. A lot of the countries are in a depression, and some are teetering on a recession. Here in the United States, we realize that the recovery isn't really a recovery, and a lot of people who are out there in the world, especially those who are getting laid off now, are starting to realize that where is this recovery? They're telling us that unemployment's at 5.9%. How come I can't find a job? Why am I getting a low-paying job? Why can't I find that full-time, high-paying job? And here are some reasons why Americans think we're still in a recession. One of them is wage stagnation. Flatlining wages are the number one reason that the majority of Americans still think we're in a recession. Most people still haven't recouped what they lost in the crash. Typical household wealth has plunged 36% since 2003. Most working people are still living hand to mouth. 76% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck with little to no emergency savings, according to a survey released by Bankrate.com. Millennials are drowning in red ink. Biggest economic threat, student loan debt. Student loan debt has grown more than 150% since 2005. We have more than $1.2 trillion of student loan debt right now. Out of all those people who are paying off their student debt, 6.7 million borrowers in repayment mode are delinquent right now. People are more vulnerable than ever. More than half of all Americans can't come up with about $400 in emergency cash unless they borrow. Working people are getting poorer. The typical household now worth a third. The inflation-adjusted net worth for typical households was $87,992 in 2003. 10 years later, it was only $56,335, or it's a 36% decline, according to a study financed by the Russell Sage Foundation. The good, high-paying jobs have vanished. Recovery has created far more low-wage jobs than better-paid ones. The deep recession wiped out primarily high-wage and middle-wage jobs, yet the strongest employment growth during the sluggish recovery has been in low-wage work at places like strip malls, fast food restaurants, hotels, hospitality, and we can see and we know that this is an ongoing problem where all these major corporations like Microsoft, Dell, the financial institutions continually lay off people, and these people are looking for work, sending out resumes, but cannot find anything. And they continually send it out, and eventually what they say is, let me just take a part-time job right now until something comes up. And they're hoping and they believe that the economy is going to get better because the government is telling them, the Fed is telling them that, yes, we're in this recovery. So they have this dream that eventually what's going to happen is that this high-paying, fantastic job is going to come along, but guess what? It never does. Okay, as we know, the Chinese are continually making deals all around the world. They're pretty much getting themselves into many different areas, setting up bilateral trades, creating clearinghouses for the yuan and renminbi. And we can see right now that they're making a deal with Nicaragua's Grand Canal project. It looks like a Chinese billionaire signed a deal for a 100-year takeover to build this canal, and a lot of the local residents are kind of against it because they're afraid that the Chinese are going to come in and take over the entire area. And it seems like this is going to rival the Panama Canal, and it looks like they're going full force in this direction. The president of Nicaragua, President Ortega, handed a 100-year concession to Chinese telecommunications magnate Wang Jing, and it seems like they're going to be building this, and this is going to basically become a new offshore banking center once free trade areas are established within the canal zone. And this is going to continually build up, and we're going to have the Chinese right down there in Central America. Now, it looks like there's a new poll out there, and it seems that the majority of Scots back a second referendum. And as we know, that first one that was held was completely fixed. It was phony, fake, and false. And we saw many different videos showing that there were a lot of ballots that were put in there. There was no way to track these ballots. They were just like printed paper with no numbers or anything on them, so they could have just dumped a whole bunch of them in there to make it look good. And it looks like YouGov poll has revealed that Scotland would vote yes to independence if another referendum were held today. The poll, which was carried 4 times, suggested that the Scottish independence now enjoys the support of 52% of people, compared with 48% who backed the no campaign. And it seems like if they had something today, they would definitely vote and they would be completely independent. And of course, we understood England did not want this to happen, and this is why they completely fixed the elections when this happened. Now, as we know, Obamacare, totally not for the people, and we know right now, before the elections, when people are signing up on healthgov.com, they didn't want to show any of the prices, and of course they're saying it's a glitch and we don't want to show it, but let me just reveal some of the prices that people are going to be shocked by once they get the bill. And we can see, I'm going to compare them from 2013 to 2014 at different ages of men and women. Women, age 23. Back in 2013, if you just had your health plan through a everyday company, it would be about $178. Under Obamacare in 2014, it's going to be $258. Man, age 23 in 2013, it would be $145. And by the way, this is per month. In 2014, it's going to be $258. And all these figures are coming from healthpocket.com, and they compared the 2013 prices to the Obamacare plans, which are coming out in 2014. Woman age 30, 2013, was $216 a month. 2014, $292 per month. Man age 30 in 2013, $168 a month. In 2014, it's going to be $292 a month. Women age 63 in 2013, it's $539 a month. In 2014, it's going to be $741. Man age 63 in the year 2013, it was $603 a month. In 2014, $741 per month. And you can look at your age. If you're between 30 and 60, you can pretty much get a rough idea of what your payment's going to be. And you can see right now, these are much, much higher than before. And of course, Obama does not want to show this before the elections. They rather have it come out afterwards because, again, the elections will be over. And this goes back to what we've been saying, is that the insurance companies got together when they were creating Obamacare and said, listen, to give everyone insurance, what do we need to do? Well, we need to raise the premium on everyone, which they did. We need to put a penalty on it to force people into the system, which they did. And we have to integrate other taxes into this to make sure the government is getting the revenue. And we need to put clauses in there to make sure that if no one takes the insurance companies are bailed out. And this is exactly what they did, and it is all coming true right now. Now, we understand that Casey Hickox, the judge, ordered that she's not going to be really quarantined at this time. She doesn't want to be quarantined. And, of course, everyone is nervous if this Ebola outbreak is actually real. I still have questions about this. I see a lot of the videos and a lot of the people who say they have Ebola when they really don't look like they're that sick, and it looks like they're kind of acting. I'm still going on the premise that this whole thing was created to have the military come down into the West African countries because there's a lot of oil and natural resources discovered. We have China and Russia on one side. We see the Chinese now bringing in 480 so military medics, which they call them. But as we know, we have soldiers on one side, which is the United States, and we have the Chinese now on the other side. It reminds me of Sudan, where the Chinese have one end, where they have their military, and the United States has theirs. And of course, there's terrorism going on, and the two sides are fighting. And it seems like we're going to see the same thing occur in this area. There's a lot of question about how this really started, that the United States kind of gave people this type of sickness, and they didn't have it there before until they went in and got some type of treatment and they came out. There's a doctor in Liberia who wrote up a whole entire thing about this. But what we're seeing now is Casey Hickok's roommate is diagnosed with Ebola right now, and they don't understand how she got it, when she got it, but they're saying that she has become infected with Ebola. Now, should Casey Hickox be roaming around the town if her roommate has it? Most likely, probably not. Now, it looks like the United States is out there, and they are calling on all countries not to recognize the November 2nd regional elections in the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic. And Jen Psaki is out there saying that every country should not recognize this whatsoever. The law stipulates that the local elections are to take place in these regions on December 7th. However, the self-proclaimed republics want full independence for the whole territory within the borders of the respective administration entities in Ukraine, and have set the date for their own elections for regional leaders and legislative bodies for November 2nd. And of course, the United States, the UN are all out there saying this is against the Minsk deal. And of course, the southeastern section saying they have a separate deal with Ukraine that they would be able to do this. And it was going to be held on December 7th, and it looks like it's going to be held on November 2nd. And of course, it seems like everything's being ramped up at this time, and we're going to have to watch this very closely. Now, as we know, in the Middle East, the people in each one of these countries are rising up, and like we said, going way back, they were going to use the Islamic State to say, hey, now we need to go into these countries, and it's starting to play out now that we're starting to see this occur. We see the Islamic State now is eyeing northern Lebanon in a major offensive, and of course, as soon as this occurs, they're going to say, the Islamic State is in the northern part of Lebanon, now we need to go into Lebanon and help out and pretty much do the same aerial bombings that we're doing in Syria. Of course, we're not going to hit the Islamic State. We're going to hit those people in Lebanon. We see the same thing happening in Libya. Dozens of residents of a town in eastern Libya have now pledged to join the Islamic State. And of course, they're going to be building this up, and they're going to be using the same exact scenario that they have in Iraq and Syria, now in Lebanon, that they can bring in the fighters to fight the terrorism and help the people in Libya. And we can see this is starting to spread now. And of course, there's no more Al-Qaeda. They're gone. It's all the Islamic State. It's amazing how Al-Qaeda can just disappear, and they're not a problem anymore in any one of these countries because, again, it was never Al-Qaeda. It was the people, and all they're doing is switching the names now to the Islamic State to make everyone believe that the Islamic State is taking over the countries and causing havoc in each one of these countries. Now, I think it was yesterday or a day before, we talked about the United States sending more advisors into the Anbar region of Iraq. And it seems like they're drawing up plans to send in more advisors or combat-ready Marines into this area. And we're seeing mission creep now. More and more boots on the ground inside the country. U.S. officers are drafting plans to deploy American military advisors to Iraq's western Anbar province. It's a plan that is being developed, a senior military officer said, on condition of anonymity. And we can see right now that they're continually doing this, and they're going to continually bring in more and more soldiers as we go along. We have to remember, they're setting up a division headquarters that can support 10 to 30,000 soldiers in this area. They're kicked out Iraq's personnel in an air base. They're taking that over, and they're setting up an air base headquarters in Iraq, and they're getting prepared. Now, in Syria, we understand that the United States has been bombing certain infrastructure areas, and they're saying they're going after the pipelines, the oil refineries, the oil fields, and we have to go back in time a little bit and understand what is going on here. In 2009, Assad refused to sign a proposed agreement with Qatar that would run a pipeline from the latter's North Field, contiguous with Iran's South Pars Field, through Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia and Jordan, Syria, and on to Turkey, with a view to supply European markets bypassing Russia. Assad's rationale was to protect the interest of Russia, and they decided to say, no, we're not going to go along with this, and we don't want to sign this deal. Instead, the following year, Assad pursued negotiations for an alternative 10 billion pipeline plan with Iran across Iraq to Syria that would also potentially allow Iran to supply gas to Europe from its South Pars field shared with Qatar. The Memorandum of Understanding for the project was signed in July 2012. The pipelines and refineries the U.S. is planning to bomb do not belong to the Islamic State, but to the Syrian people, and you can see what they're doing at this point in time. They are destroying their infrastructure because they want to come in, put their natural resources on the US dollar, build these pipelines that they wanted to build before, and then they'll eventually get into Iran, which then they will do the same exact thing. And we can see this is really starting to show itself out in the open here, and we can see what is really going on. And again, the White House right now is downplaying Hagel's warning on policy towards Assad. The policy that we have for Assad is really clear. We believe that he's lost the legitimacy to lead. Well, I don't know how he lost that. He had all the people in his country vote, and they voted him into power. It's almost like Syria coming out saying President Obama lost his legitimacy to lead the country of the United States. Would anyone look at this and say, okay, that makes sense, let's go and invade the United States? No, so this whole thing makes no sense, but this is coming from the White House. A two-page memo, Hagel to National Security Advisor Susan Rice has reportedly warned that U.S. policy on Syria failed to clarify intentions toward Assad. Hagel's memo warned that the Obama administration's goal of ousting Assad was being undercut by its current military offensive against the Islamic State terrorist group in Iraq and Syria. It further said that the White House had no clear endgame for the conflict. Well, you have to remember, this whole thing is being created and done to remove Assad. The Islamic State is a proxy army. They're moving in, destroying the infrastructure, weakening the economy to eventually go after Assad to set up that no-fly zone. So yes, this whole thing that they're doing is to remove Assad completely. Now it seems like the British travelers are now being warned, just like the U.S. travelers in the Middle East. Foreign Office issues advice over heightened threat of attack in retaliation for UK airstrikes against the Islamic State. It urges all Britons living or traveling overseas to be vigilant at the current time. The updated FCO advice states there is considered to be a heightened threat of terrorist activity globally against UK interests and British nationals from groups or individuals motivated by the conflict in Iraq and Syria. You should be vigilant at this time. And we see two warnings now coming out. And of course, what this means is they're going to plan something very, very soon. And we saw this every single time before they were going into Sudan. They had a warning coming out from the embassy, and then all of a sudden terrorism broke out there. We saw it in Mali. We see it in Nigeria with Boko Haram, and now we're seeing it and giving warnings to all people in the United States who are in the Middle East. Now the British people who are in the Middle East and around the world, more warnings are coming out because they are definitely planning something very big. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.